All right, let's dive in. Today, we're tackling that classic government contracting alpha-outh soup. The FAR, DFARs, and all the agency-specific regulations that orbit around them. It's a dense forest, right? So maybe we start at the top. The FAR, which is the Federal Acquisition Regulation, is basically the backbone of federal procurement guidance. Every executive branch agency has to play by these rules. Civilian, defense, you name it.
And underneath that, you've got Chapter 99 for cost accounting standards, and then all these supplements. DFARs for defense, AFARs for the Army, DAFARs if you're Air Force, NEMCARs for the Navy and Marine Corps, even AGAR for agriculture, DEER for energy. The list just keeps sprawling. Each agency tailors some things to its specific mission or risk profile, but they all sit on that FAR foundation.
Exactly. When you look at FAR, it's setting the baseline. Those are your government-wide policies for acquiring goods and services. Every contractor needing to do business with the federal government must comply. But once you're dealing with, say, Department of Defense requirements, that baseline gets more intense. DFARS rides on top and brings things like national security, special DoD data rights, or unique cyber risk. DFARS fills in gaps or sometimes overrides FAR if there's a conflict. That's crucial. DFARS always takes precedence in DoD contracts.
Yeah, when I landed my first gig helping a contract manager at an Aussie-American defense company, it felt like drowning in acronyms. One day it's FAR, next day it's DFARS, then NMCARS. Nobody warned me it'd look like someone just held down the shift key and rolled their forehead on the keyboard. But seriously, it took me a while to realize each supplement, like AFARS for Army or DAFARS for the Air Force, is just stacking extra rules on top of the universal FAR playbook for that agency's flavor of risk, mission, or legal quirks. It's not just bureaucracy for the sake of it, though some days it does feel that way, doesn't it?
Yeah, agencies leverage their supplements mainly because one size doesn't fit all. The DoD, for example, needs to account for classified programs or unique national security matters, so they bolt those concepts onto DFARS. HUD or the Department of State, different set of priorities. Still, everyone is speaking the same regulatory language at the core, FAR, then elaborating where necessary.
And that's why, if you're in procurement, compliance, or even subcontractor management, you can't just check the FAR box and call it a day. You really need to pay attention to those layered supplements, to know for whom they're intended and when they actually apply. Otherwise, you risk missing critical requirements that only show up in, say, NMCARs or VAAR.
So once you've made peace with the acronym AVALANCHE, the next headache is, how does FAR Part 12, for example, compare to DFARS or NMCARs? It's not uncommon to hit a scenario where, let's say, you think you've ticked all the boxes for a commercial products acquisition, but the Navy or Air Force supplement throws a wrench in it. And that's where the Acquisition Regulation Comparator, the ARC, comes in handy. It's built for that exact question.
RK. Honestly feels like a breath of fresh air for the visual learners among us. You just select two regs, maybe FAR and DFARS, or DFARS and NEMCARS, and pick your part, like Part 15 for negotiations. Bam! Side-by-side comparison. It's not just a table, it instantly highlights where agencies add, change, or pull something altogether. It's almost like peeking behind the curtain, seeing where your contract requirements might diverge based on agency or even funding source.
I'll admit, this kind of tool takes some of the guesswork out of supplement compliance audits, too. Contracting officers and legal teams can spot right away if there's an extra clause for IT work under DFARS or unique intellectual property language for NASA in the NFS, without manually flipping through two different books. Saves time, reduces risk of oversight, and improves transparency.
We had a real live fire moment with this a while back. My team was sorting out a cybersecurity procurement, and there was this clash. FAR had one take, but DFARS amped up the requirements based on the data type. Using RK, We cross-referenced both sets of rules, and within minutes, we zeroed in on the DFARS clause that absolutely had to take precedence, based on the sensitive nature of the work. And that saved us from some serious compliance heartburn down the road.
I think for folks who are new, or honestly for anyone who doesn't want to memorize 50,000 pages of overlap and exception, the RK is just brilliant. It clarifies where you really need to pay attention, especially if you're working across agencies or contemplating something with a joint funding stream. No more second-guessing or missing buried requirements at the 11th hour.
And this ties back to what we discussed in past episodes. If you're not using the tools available, you make your job so much harder than it needs to be. ARC is like that translator on your phone. Click a couple buttons, and all of a sudden, two worlds make sense side by side, and you can move forward with confidence.
All right, let's shift from comparisons and clashes to the next frontier, making sense of clause selection itself. Enter the Smart Matrix. This tool lets you filter contract clauses based on your scenario. Are you working a fixed-price contract, cost reimbursement, R&D, or construction? It's one of the single best ways to ensure your contract includes all the required provisions, and just as importantly, doesn't catch any unnecessary baggage.
Exactly, Roz. The Smart Matrix goes beyond what's the law say to what do we really need here, today, for this particular contract. For procurement or compliance pros, legal teams, anyone responsible for clause screening, it lets you pull by contract type, delivery scenario, even things like demolition or architectural work. It assigns statuses too, clauses that are required, required when applicable, or optional. That level of precision saves a lot of headaches.
Confession time. When Jellypod started rolling out those AI podcast tools, I must have run a dozen scenarios through Smart Matrix because I didn't want to screw up a service agreement and get a call from legal. And you know what? It's way less intimidating seeing all those requirements show up as a filtered, digestible checklist. Compared to scrolling a wall of text, it actually made me think, maybe, just maybe, I could handle a government contract.
It's the difference between getting lost in an endless regs maze and, following a nice brightly lit path. Instead of, did I forget a required label or clause? It's, here it is, highlighted with guidance. If you're new, the clarity means you don't lose confidence. If you're seasoned, it saves time and double-checking everything twice.
And the bottom line, these tools, ARK, Smart Matrix, all of it. They're not just conveniences. They're your guardrails for compliance, accuracy, and, frankly, sanity. They make sure you've covered your bases, backed by real regulatory authority.
Couldn't have said it better, Roz. Well, that's where we'll leave it for this episode. If you want more deep dives or have questions about FAR, DFARS, and the ocean of federal contracting acronyms, send them our way. Thanks you, Ruby, Paul, Roz. Always a pleasure. We'll see you all next time on the Procurement Federal Acquisition Supplement and Defense Federal Acquisition Supplements Clauses podcast.
Cheers, everyone. Don't let the acronyms get you down. And remember, there are tools for that.
Thanks all. See you next time. Stay compliant. Stay informed.
Goodbye, everyone. Remember, rules matter, but tools make following them a whole lot easier. Until next time.